Hello, guys and gals, and welcome! So, I'm pretty excited about this one. We got a feedback, dev post. So if you guys have never had one of these before, basically what this is that, let's say you complain about something, alright? You know, I don't know, my druid's hair looks weird. I want it fixed. It's curly and it should be straight, or something like that, right? And if enough people complain, usually the developers will respond with a, hey, we're looking into this, we're going to get it fixed, here's what we're going to do, so to speak. All right, now, there was a lot of feedback for Diablo 4 after the open beta. Basically what this is this is the developers responding with what they're going to do to fix the problems that we brought to their attention during open beta. And this is pretty exciting because, it's nice to see how far they're willing to go to fix some of the problems that we encountered during the beta. So without further ado, let's hop into this. Let me actually make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. Why not? I wish I could take this news thing off the side. I probably can, to be honest. I don't know if you guys have ever done this before, but basically it's where you delete things from the list. So you basically just go like this, inspect, and then you delete it. And then you just keep inspecting, and then you just keep deleting. And eventually, everything on the page just disappears. It looks like I'd have to do it for every single article, unfortunately. Alright, so Diablo 4 Open Beta Retrospective Transforming Feedback into Change. Yes, Boobus, I see you. On the weekends of March 17th to the 24th, Sanctuary let out a cry for help, a cry that would be answered by hordes of wanderers who rode in on a nameless horse and loosened Lilith's grasp on Sanctuary. During the early access and open beta weekends, these players sent countless demons back to the burning hells, obtained powerful gear, and saw Lilith's grand plot begin to unfold before them. Many of these players also took the time to leave valuable feedback on our official Diablo 4 forums and on platforms such as Reddit and Discord. After the early access and open beta weekends concluded, the development team read through all of your feedback and reviewed gameplay data. Using this information, we have made a variety of fixes and updates to various systems in Diablo 4, all of which will be present in the version of the game that launches on June 6th. None of this would be possible without the community's dedication and love for the Diablo universe, to which we say thank you. So the first thing on the list here is dungeons. Dungeons and dungeon layouts. One of the most common pieces of feedback we received is that players felt they were doing a lot of backtracking within certain dungeons. We have optimized multiple dungeons across all zones to minimize the need for backtracking. Here's a list of the dungeons specifically in Fractured Peak Zone which received layout updates. Caldera Gate, Defiled Catacombs, Derelict Lodge, Forbidden City, Hoarfrost's Demise, Immortal Emanation, Core Dragon Barracks, Mallwood, and Rhymescar Caverns. Developers note: our primary goal with the layout changes was to reduce certain kinds of backtracking which detract from a player's experience. An example of this change is that players previously needed to enter side rooms to interact with structure objectives, causing them to retread the same path. Now many of our structure objectives have been repositioned along main dungeon pathways, making them easier for players to reach and allowing them to readily explore the dungeons after defeating the structure. Dungeon events. The chance for an event to spawn inside of dungeons has increased from 10% to 60%. Dungeon gameplay. To reduce the need to backtrack, small numbers of straggling monsters will seek out the player to help complete the kill-all monster objectives, so they'll chase you down. It's actually nice. When Animus is gathered, the player and nearby allies will gain 10 resource, reduce all active cooldowns by 1 second. Depositing Animus channel time was reduced from 3 to 0 seconds. The time to rescue was reduced from 3 to 1.5. All rescue objectives now drop a health potion upon completion. While carrying the Ancient's statue, bloodstone, mechanical box, or stone carving, you will receive a momentum bonus, granting 25% move speed. increase to you and nearby allies. Pedestals have had their channel time reduced from 2 to 0 seconds. Returning a portable object to its pedestal now fully restores health, resource points, and resets cooldowns for all nearby players. Why? All doors will now generate a minimap ping when they are opened. All structure, objectives, and dungeons now have an additional combat mechanics players must overcome. All structure, objectives, and dungeons now have additional combat mechanics. Developers note, while our dungeons offer a variety of objectives to complete, player feedback stated that the action of completing each objective felt tedious. We hope that providing bonuses, such as the increase to mobility while carrying certain objective items, will streamline and vary the experience of completing objectives. This adjustment is merely a starting point, and we intend to extend this philosophy to keys in a future update. Classes. Effects like stun and freeze can be applied to elite monsters twice as long before they become unstoppable. So they've increased the amount of time that you can stun or freeze elite monsters. Reviewed class skills to confirm that all classes have access to sufficient skills that remove control impairing effects. So basically they want every class to have sort of like their own cannot be frozen, so to speak. Like if we're talking Diablo 2, Diablo 2, like you can work in cannot be frozen somewhere, right? Well, basically they have unstoppable is essentially the cannot be frozen for Diablo 4. And so they're trying to make sure that every class has access to some form of unstoppable to remove control impairing effects, which will free you in times of need. So that way, if you do get frozen or, stunned or whatever's going on, you can hit your unstoppable ability and get out of that. So they're just trying to make sure that all classes have an unstoppable ability so they can actually remove themselves from danger. Many legendary powers have updates to their effectiveness. That could be good or bad, by the way. That could be like, oh, we've updated it so it's more effective, or we've updated it so it's less effective. I'm gonna take a wild guess here and say that the Blood Mist one probably got a heavy nerf bat. Barbarian, a flat 10% passive damage reduction has been added for the Barbarian class. A lot of people talked about this. The Barbarian just kind of felt very squishy. Extremely squishy, actually. And that makes sense, actually, because comparatively to a lot of the other classes, for some reason or another, the Barbarian just felt really not tough. I mean, I felt it too. Like, you pretty much had to have iron skin on the Barbarian to even like hope to survive anything, and that makes a lot of sense. Some skill tree passives had their damage reduction effects reduced to compensate, I guess. So they basically gave him a buff, but then also reduced the passive so that you can't get him as high anymore. The whirlwind skill now deals more damage and consumes more fury. I guess people complained that it wasn't doing enough damage. The double swing skill enhancement refunds its full fury cost when used on a stunned or knocked down enemy now. Druid. Companion skills will now deal heavily increased damage. So Companions got a buff. So that's the Wolf, the Vine Creeper, the Raven. The Raven was actually pretty nice already. All ultimate skills have had their cooldowns reduced. Usability improvements have been made to Maul and Pulverize. Using a non-shapeshifting skill will transform a druid back into their human form. Apparently that wasn't happening. Necromancer summon minions will die more often, requiring players to utilize corpses more often. So they're going to make them weaker. I thought they were already weak enough. Even on boss fights, they died all the time. Many bonuses in the Book of the Dead have had their stats increased. The damage dealt by the corpse explosion skill has been reduced. So they nerfed corpse explosion because of the blood mist build, huh? The brightness of the skeletal warriors and mages has been reduced. Thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you. They look like they were coming out of a freaking Disney movie. I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know who was in charge of making the skeletal warrior design, but the skeletal warriors look cool, but they glow like somebody cracked a whole bunch of glow sticks and shoved it inside of them. They don't need to be glowing like a dang Christmas tree. Like, make them look evil and dead and like decaying and like flesh hanging off their bones and stuff. Like, we don't need to see them glowing like a Disney character. Rogue. Upgrades for subterfuge skills have had their bonuses increased. Multiple passive skills have had their bonuses increased. All imbuement skills have had their cooldowns increased. The imbuement skills were actually pretty powerful on the Rogue. I tested out quite a few of them. The Shadow one was the clear winner, but honestly they were all good, and I can understand them increasing the cooldown because they were just like really freaking good. Like, honestly, on a Rogue, you'd be an idiot not to take advantage of the imbuement skills the way they had them. I'm not sure if this is going to change it to the point where you might want to reconsider, but like, there was no reason not to use an imbuement skill on that character. It's like Paladin with the Holy Shield. Like, every Paladin who has a shield uses Holy Shield. It's just like that good. And the imbuement skills were literally that good. Like, they were just godlike. So you just always chose at least one. And the Shadow one was literally the most powerful, so you ended up doing the Shadow one. Just simply because Sorcerer or Sorceress. Charge Bolt damage was increased, and the mana cost to cast has been decreased. So Charge Bolt got a buff. Decreased the damage of Chain Lightning and reduced its effectiveness against bosses. So Chain Lightning got a nerf, which is to be expected because Chain Lightning was freaking broken in the beta. And I think everybody who played Sorceress and everybody who participated with, playing around with that particular ability, the Chain Lightning ability, everybody knew that freaking ability was freaking just ridiculously broken. Decrease the cooldown for Incinerate. Skills enchantment bonus. Cooldown. Okay, so that's a buff. So the enchantment bonus is when it like occurs randomly. So in decreasing the cooldown for the skills enchantment bonus is literally that it's going to happen more often. So the enchantment bonus is something that happens at random, essentially, like when you're using other abilities. And this is going to give you essentially another chance to get more of that enchantment bonus. So they buffed the enchantment bonus for Incinerate. Firewalls will now spawn underneath enemies more frequently when using its enchantment bonus. So again, another buff to Firewall's enchantment bonus. Increased the lucky hit chance for Meteor skills enchantment bonus. So it looks like they nerfed pretty much like the main skill that people were using, right? So this one honestly is one of the main skills people were using on a regular basis. And so they nerfed it. Charge Bolt wasn't getting used as often. Firewall wasn't getting used as often. Incinerate wasn't getting used as often. Meteor wasn't getting used as often. So they buffed it, right? So they buffed all the ones that weren't getting used, and they nerfed the one that was getting used too much. That's basically what I'm reading here. Developers note, whenever we introduce changes to our classes, it is the goal of making both of them and their skills feel impactful and powerful. Your feedback has helped us uphold this ideal. Some players have adeptly noticed that certain skills were too powerful. One of our goals for skills is to have them be interesting to wield and interactive in terms of itemization and combat feel. We've made some changes to help in this regard, with one example being Necromancer's minions. We've made a change that makes them more vulnerable in combat. I don't really know why they needed that. They were already pretty vulnerable. Will you quit snooping over here, Cody? Get, snooper. Get. That's right, G-I-T, get. Which will make Raising the Dead more active component of the Necromancer's gameplay. I'm not entirely sure this is a good idea, because corpses are not always readily available. Making them more vulnerable, it just means that you're going to be spending more of your time summoning them, and it's going to make it less likely that necromancers are going to utilize the minions. Because if you make them too weak, if you make them into something that is too much of a micromanaging situation where you're constantly having to resummon them forever, like you're just never-endingly resummoning them because they're always dying, in that case, it's not gonna be something necromancers are going to want to do. Because you got to think they want the minions to stand there and do their job so that they can do something else. They don't want to have to micromanage the minions and then they can't do anything else while they're micromanaging them. That just seems kind of eh. We'll have to see how much weaker they made them, but I don't know. I don't like that they're making the minions weaker. If anything, the minions needed to be a little bit stronger, to be honest, because more often than not in boss battles and things like that, they would just die instantly. So now they're going to go from dying instantly to dying in a fraction of a second. The launch is just the first step of our class balance journey, and you can expect further updates that iterate on this pillar of Diablo 4. God dang, I can't even do nothing because the dog is just all up in my grill. Back it up, Kubus. UI fixes. Fixed an issue where the built-in screen reader was not reading key prompts and game options, details, and other UI text. I don't really care. I mean, I hate to say it, but I've never used the screen reader, like, ever. Most people will never use the screen reader. It's really it's an accessibility thing, right? So it's something for when people need accessibility. So, I mean, it's good for the people that need it, but this doesn't affect like 99% of the people that are going to play the game. Honestly, I would even say 99.9% of the people that play the game are probably not going to use this. Fixed an issue where actions could not be bound to the mouse wheel. Fixed an issue where evade couldn't be bound to the right analog stick on the controller. Chat will now display on the left side of the screen when using the centered action bar configuration. A character's stats will be displayed by default when players click the materials and stats button within their inventory. That's kind of, yeah, like that. I thought that was kind of stupid. I don't know if you guys remember that, but there was basically there was a button on the character panel that literally just said materials and stats, right? And as soon as you clicked it, it would open up the materials. And of course, that's not what you went there for. You didn't go to look at your materials. That was stupid. You were going to look at the stats. And so it was defaulted to the materials, and you would automatically then have to go and change it to the stats, which was stupid. So that's actually a pretty good change. The move and interact inputs can now be mapped to one button, while the primary attack input is mapped to a second button. Interesting. The sans serif font used in-game has been replaced with a new serif font. But a lot of people were complaining about the font. That was actually a very common complaint, is that we literally had a whole lot of people complaining that the font was was terrible looking, and they didn't understand why they had chosen that particular font. And it's actually pretty stupid. I don't know why it wasn't... I don't know why they didn't think about that. Like, font choice is a pretty big thing for video games. I mean, that's something you're going to see all the time. And choosing a stupid-looking font is... for a freaking fantasy game. I don't know why they're not using Exocet, which is literally the Diablo font. Exocet is literally the Diablo font. Like, it was in Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. And they could have made some tweaks to it if they felt that it wasn't quite up to the task, but Exocet is literally the Diablo font. I mean, if I pull up a freaking notepad right here, I've downloaded Exocet in my computer, and you can literally just change the font to Exocet, which is right here, and you can literally just type in whatever you want. I mean, I don't understand why they're not using the Diablo font. It doesn't make any sense to me why they wouldn't just use the Diablo font. Encounters fixed multiple issues that allowed bosses like the Butcher to become unresponsive. I didn't have that happen. I encountered the Butcher many times and never had that happen. The Butcher has been reevaluated for difficulty and will present a greater challenge in World Tiers 3 and 4. They're going to buff the Butcher up a little bit. Good. Bosses such as Tchort, Malnock, Venard, and others were reevaluated for melee character difficulty, resulting in changes to attacks and fight mechanics. Some of the bosses were particularly difficult for melee characters. I noticed that because I did like pretty much everything for Diablo. I mean, for Diablo 4 and on all characters, and it did seem like the melee characters had it a little bit hard in certain fights. So that's interesting. Fixed an issue where vampire brutes using the Shadow Enchant affix would chain cast Impale. Okay. Cellars. Increase the chance for dungeon events to occur in cellars. So if you guys are unaware of this, the Butcher could spawn in cellars. But apparently it was so low that it just rarely ever happened. And cellars are pretty garbage, in my opinion. And this is probably what this is about, by the way. I'm just about to read. But they were pretty bad. Like, there was hardly anything in there that even justified the load screen, let alone going in there. So they've increased the chance for the Butcher to spawn in the cellars. Cellars will now consistently reward a chest upon completion. Okay. Fixed an issue where cellars would prematurely be marked as complete. Fixed an issue where the guaranteed elite monster would be absent from the cellar. Well, that would explain why half the time when I walked in the cellar, there was nothing down there. General quality of life. Fixed an issue where players could increase attack speed by move-canceling attacks earlier. Fixed an issue where characters weren't immune and untargetable after loading into an area. What? Fixed an issue where characters were not immune, so they're not unkillable, but they are also untargetable after loading into an area. Well, if they're untargetable, doesn't that also make them technically immune? I mean, I guess for AoE attacks. The reset dungeon button has been disabled. Wow, okay. I wonder why that is. Apparently, I mean, I had a lot of people who were resetting dungeons over and over again. I guess they don't want you farming the same dungeon repeatedly forever, which is what people were doing in Diablo 4. That's a pretty big change. And I know several people within my kinship who were taking advantage of the reset dungeon feature and were just resetting the dungeons over and 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 over again, and doing them literally for like hours on end. So apparently just not able to reset dungeons anymore. I'm not sure exactly what that means in the long run. I guess you need to... I guess we're going to have to go to different dungeons now. Like, I guess you're going to have to go from dungeon to dungeon to dungeon and actually do multiple different areas. There's no way that you can farm the same dungeon repeatedly. I'm assuming the dungeon will eventually reset. But, yeah, interesting. Fixed an issue that caused Gale Valley and Sarek Rapture to have less monsters than intended until the campaign quest in those territories were completed. Tune in to the next Diablo 4 developer update live stream. So apparently we've got a live stream on April 20th. This is the one with Riker. So that one's going to be 6 days from now, which is, what, Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday at 11 a.m. PDT, which is probably going to be around, what, like, I think it's +3 for my time zone, so 12, 1, 2, so like 2 o'clock Eastern Standard or something like that. On April 20th, 11 a.m. PDT, Game Director Joe Shelley, Associate Game Director Joseph Piapora, and Associate Director of Community Adam Fletcher, accompanied by special guest host Riker, will return for the next Diablo 4 update live stream. This time, our group of Diablo 4 experts will uncover details about Diablo 4's endgame offerings and elaborate on post-open beta changes made to classes and dungeons. So they're gonna go over some of these changes with us and actually talk about them. I guess we'll have to see what the hell's going on there. Hopefully they will elaborate on some of these changes, like why they made this change specifically. That's a pretty big change, honestly, and that one's gonna have some repercussions, especially within the at least within my community. Like I can tell you for a fact that people were using the crap out of that one, so that one's not going to be there anymore. There were some other ones in here that were interesting too. I mean, like Cellar's getting a overhaul. Honestly, was definitely needed. They were not very good. It was definitely a negative, like in my eyes. Cellars in general were just kind of like a crappy holdover from Diablo 3, in my opinion. And unless they can make them into something more than just simply like a room with a bunch of monsters in it, I mean, it looks like you'll get a reward chest more consistently. Doesn't guarantee anything. The butcher might show up more often. I mean, that isn't as a good reason to go in the cellars, in my opinion. Right there is literally having access to the cellars. Butcher. So going into every cellar and hoping the butcher comes and beats the crap out of you, like that's a pretty fun reason to go down there. Other than that, though, like not really. The butcher's difficulty being increased, that is honestly a great thing in my opinion. The butcher should represent a serious challenge in my opinion, and should push players to focus their characters and you know and come up with better builds. So like just in general, I think that the butcher being stronger than he already was in the beta, which I felt like he was pretty strong in the beta, because he killed a lot of people. He killed a lot of people, if I remember correctly. In fact, I'm pretty sure I got a graphic of how many people he killed, and it's pretty hilariously huge. Where is that ridiculous graphic? Of course, I don't have it on hand, do I? No, I don't. Pretty sure it was something like 2.3 million people, though, he killed during the open and the early access beta. So him being even stronger than he was in the early access beta sounds really good to me, because 2.3 million is not enough to be murdered by the butcher. Trying to see if there's any other like really good tidbits in here. I mean, the font being changed is a good thing. Who knows what they changed it to? I mean, it says that they used sans serif font and they're changing it to a new serif font. So it's still going to be a serif font. It's just going to be a different one. I mean, this was a nice change. Not really all that important, but it's definitely nice that when I click on the materials and stats button, it'll actually take me to the stats, which is what I'm interested in, not the materials. I mean, some kind of like changes on the just ability to do mappings, which is definitely nice to be able to map things in specific ways, but a lot of mapping changes and fixes here and there. The sorcerer's risks got a lot of buffs, but also a nerf in the process. So, I mean, Charge Bolt got a buff, Incinerate got a buff, Firewall got a buff, and Meteor got a buff. Chain Lightning got nerfed. Pretty hard, actually. Not only did they decrease the damage of Chain Lightning, but they also reduced its effectiveness against bosses. So Chain Lightning got hit pretty hard by the nerf bat. The Rogue got a nerf to her imbuement skills, which was pretty on par, to be honest. It's kind of needed. The imbuement skills are pretty OP. I don't know exactly how much their cooldowns got increased by, but it shouldn't affect them that much. They're still pretty OP even with a longer cooldown, though you're just going to have to take a little while before you reuse them. The Necromancer had some weird changes. Summon minions will die more often. Kind of sucks because they already died a lot. Not really sure what the hell they were going for here. I feel like this is a bad change overall, and they might end up reverting this. But we'll see. Many bonuses of the Book of the Dead had their stats increased. So, like, the combination of these two abilities right here, like, the combination of these two is going to lead people more towards sacrificing their minions. Like, when you make the minions die more often and they have to be micromanaged, you're going to push players towards sacrificing them. And then not only did they push players towards sacrificing them, but they increased the bonuses for sacrificing them. So I don't know what they're trying to do here other than force players not to use the minions. The corpse explosion getting its damage reduced was actually kind of... Yeah, it probably needed it. Some of the corpse explosion builds were pretty broken. But I'm sure it still does pretty good damage. And then this was a really good change, in my opinion, because the skeletal warriors and the skeletal mages were just way too glowy. Like some sort of freaking Disney characters popping out with... I don't even understand what the hell they were going for there. I mean, I didn't necessarily think that they needed to change them. Just specifically let me change mine. Like, I was even open for the idea of just like having some cosmetics that you could purchase or get at random times, and you know, like that way I could change my skeletons to look like whatever I want to. If I want them to look more gruesome and grim, then I can have them look gruesome and grim, and if somebody else wants theirs to glow like freaking jack-o'-lanterns on Halloween, then they can have theirs glow like jack-o'-lanterns on Halloween. It's perfectly fine. It's not something that I'm going to you know, like argue with people about, I guess would be the term. I just don't want mine glowing. Like, so, but I mean, having the glowiness of all skeletal warriors reduced, I guess, is okay too. I'm not really sure what the hell this is. Using a non-shape-shifting skill will transform a druid back into their human form. I'm pretty sure this already happened, like, all the time. I played the druid through, I played a werewolf druid, and I played a earth druid, and every single time I used a non-shape-shifting skill, I automatically transformed back. So I don't understand what this is, unless there was some sort of bug that, some sort of bug that caused it to not work properly. Not really sure what the hell's going on. All ultimates have had their cooldowns reduced. Some of the ultimates on the druid were pretty silly. Like, they had really long cooldowns and they weren't really that great. I didn't particularly like them. I thought they were kind of meh. So having their cooldowns reduced might make them more useful, I guess. Usability improvements have been made to maul and pulverize. So bear buffs, I guess, or bear fixes. And a lot of people complained about the companions not doing enough damage, so there you go. Companions had a heavily increased damage. Not just increased damage, but heavily increased damage. So the companions have gotten some pretty crazy buffs. The Barbarian did get a flat 10% increase to damage reduction, but also got a reduction to the passives to make up for the flat increase. So basically, a lot of people noted that the Barbarian just felt really weak. The Barbarian felt really, really squishy. And they weren't wrong. Like, the Barbarian was really squishy, and I don't know why. So this will potentially fix the Barbarian from being so squishy early on when the character, you know, otherwise shouldn't be squishy. It seems like, though, overall, though, if you were to put the points into the passives to increase the Barbarian's tankiness, it would basically be the same thing anyway once you have your points in those skills. So they're not, like, actually giving the Barbarian more tankiness. They're just giving you more passive tankiness as opposed to forcing you to put those points into the skills, which I guess is, it's just a wash anyway, right? Because you'd probably put those points in. If they had left the Barbarian at his current tankiness, you probably would have put those points into the passives anyway. This one is scary right here. So we saw a lot of legendary powers. We saw a lot of various things. We saw some a couple unique items. Nothing too crazy, but basically, kind of what I said at the end of beta. Everybody was like, "I'm gonna try and get this legendary as soon as I start the game," or I'm gonna build this particular legendary item." And guys. I was like, "There's no guarantee that literally what we have seen in this beta is going to be what we see at launch." I was like, they could change every single one of these legendary items. They could change all of them for all we know. By the time the game launches, we could see huge swathing changes to every single one of these legendary powers, unique items, the unique powers, and all this stuff. Like, it's not gonna. There's no guarantee it's gonna be the same. And this right here, this little, unimposing sentence is literally just that. They're literally saying that they have pretty much changed a large number of the legendary powers that we saw. Either, buffed up the effectiveness of them, reduced the effectiveness of them, changed them completely. I mean, who freaking knows? Yes, Eugene, you pretty much had to invest in Iron Skin to run the Barbarian. If you didn't have Iron Skin as a Barbarian, you were pretty much going to die. Yeah, Whirlwind got a buff too, so the Whirlwind skill got a pretty heavy buff for damage, but it also now consumes more Fury, so it's going to be harder to maintain. So the way they had it set up before was you could pretty much just permanently maintain it. So you could just maintain the Whirlwind in a battle, and if you had it set up correctly, you could just continually Whirlwind the entire battle long, literally just spin to win. But now how they have it set up is they increase the damage output of it, but they also increase the fury cost, which means that it's going to be less likely you're going to be able to maintain the Whirlwind skill indefinitely. Which, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, because I know Whirlwind Barbarians usually like Whirlwinding for a longer period of time. They don't like to have to stop and build up Fury, and then Whirlwind again, and then stop, and then build up Fury, and then Whirlwind again. So this is they've changed it into more of a stop, build up Fury, and Whirlwind again, as opposed to a Whirlwind and keep Whirlwinding. I mean, this one is okay. I mean, all right. I mean, making sure every class has access to an unstoppable is definitely nice, but I'm not really sure if it's really all that important. This one is interesting though. Effects like stun and freeze can be applied to monsters twice as long before they become unstoppable. Having this one means that we have access to, more ways to lock down an elite monster, but this is only elites. It's not bosses. So we're not talking about bosses. We're just talking about elites. Bosses and boss-like monsters are still going to be relatively, unstunnable. They can be staggered, I think, but that's about it. And it just says twice as long. So I guess you just get a little bit more time to deal with them. I'm a little bit concerned about the dungeon gameplay changes. Like, I felt like a lot of the complaints about the dungeon gameplay didn't have anything to do with what they changed. Am I wrong here in thinking that they changed some really weird things about dungeons? Like, instead of focusing on kind of like the how they felt very linear, they made them more linear. How did they make them more linear? They literally said it right here. It was where is it? One of our most common piece of feedback we received is that players felt they were doing a lot of backtracking within certain dungeons. We have optimized multiple dungeons across zones to minimize the need for backtracking. So they took the linear dungeons that were literally like almost like straight lines that you had absolutely no choice on where to go, And they took the one thing that you had a choice to do, which was literally backtracking for stuff, because you had to backtrack to do specific things. And they literally, now they're taking away the backtracking too. So they literally made them even more linear. So they're now just as linear as you could possibly be. They basically, what they've now said is that it's going to be a straight line, and everything that you want to do is going to be on that straight line. So as you're traveling through the line, you go here, do that objective, and then keep going, and then go here and do that objective, and you just keep going straight. And you go do there, and you do that objective, and you just keep going straight. They've basically just changed a mostly linear dungeon into an all linear dungeon, which doesn't even make any sense, because I'm pretty sure one of the major feedbacks that a lot of people were giving on the dungeons was that they were too linear, not that they needed to be more linear. And this whole thing right here is literally just, let's make the dungeons more linear. This one is kind of interesting, though, like having more events spawn inside the dungeons, which is going to make them more random and more chaotic, is definitely nice. Like, that is definitely a good change. Having them more chaotic is good. I mean, having them more linear is not, but having them more chaotic is definitely nice. So there's going to be random events, more random events, 50% more random events. To reduce the need to backtrack, small numbers of straggling monsters will seek out the player to help complete the kill all mission objectives. Now, I'm not exactly opposed to this, because I like that monsters will chase you down. Monsters chasing you down equals more difficulty, and I do like more difficulty. So I'm not necessarily opposed to this one. I think this one is a good change, but I don't think that is the reason why it needs to occur. Just simply have monsters chase you down on occasion. Like, that's fine. This whole bullcrap right here. All right, I feel like I need to talk about this bullcrap. Like, I don't understand what the hell they're doing here. Like, as I was reading it, I kept thinking to myself, why? Just why? Why? Every time I read one, I'm like, why? Like, why? Like, why are we doing this? I think this was the only one that made sense, because it just puts a little thing on the map when you open up a door. But, like, why do we need a buff every single time we collect an animus? Why did the channel time for depositing the animus need to be reduced? Why did the time to rescue people need to be reduced? Why does every rescue objective have to drop a health potion? Like, why do we need a movement speed bonus while we're carrying the box? To not only to you, but also to all nearby allies. Like, it seems like what they're trying to do is they're trying to incentivize you to play inside the dungeons by giving you buffs and things, and, like, free potions, and, like, you know, like, if you go to the store and they give you, like, free candy, like, every time you come to the store, they're like, oh, thanks for coming to Walmart, here's a Snickers. Thanks for coming to Walmart, here's a Snickers. Thanks for coming to Walmart, here's a Snickers. Like it feels like they're trying to give you something every single time you do an objective or an event to make you feel like you're getting something, like because you need a Snickers every time you go to Walmart or something. I don't understand it. It's like a health potion here, resources there, reduction in active cooldowns here, like run speed bonus there, fully restored resources here. Honestly, and all this is going to do is make the game easier. This is going to 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 make the game easier. These two make the game less time wasting, I guess, but also easier. This one makes the game easier. I mean, it's like a whole weird, like, let's make the game easier thing here. The only thing that seems to be making the game less easy is this one right here. So all structure objectives in the dungeons now have additional combat mechanics that players must overcome. So basically what we're saying here is that they made the structure objectives more difficult, but then in the process they made everything else easier. Like legit everything else easier, but they made this one more difficult. I'm not really sure what the hell they're trying to do there. I mean, this one really is scary though. I have no clue what the hell they did. I can make some assumptions, like the Blood Mist legendary probably got nerfed. I would assume that the Blood Mist legendary got nerfed. If you haven't seen the Blood Mist, the horrendousness of the Blood Mist build and how ridiculous it was that you could literally be invincible 100% of the time. I don't mean like I had a barrier or like, you know, it was hard to kill you. No. With the Blood Mist build, you were literally invincible. And it had 100% uptime, so you were just invincible all the time, and you did massive amounts of damage. So we can be pretty sure that the Blood Mist one probably got nerfed into oblivion. And there's probably other ones, like Twisting Blades probably got nerfed as well. The Twisting Blades one was pretty OP, and there were some pretty crazy things you could do with the Twisting Blades. I mean, I'm sure if I ask you guys in the comments which ones do you think got nerfed? Like, what legendaries do you think got nerfed, and which ones do you think got buffed? Because you're probably right. Because if you had the feeling that a legendary effect was too powerful, then there's a pretty good chance that they nerfed it. And if you have a feeling that the legendary power was too weak, then there's a pretty good chance that they buffed it up. I mean, you're not wrong, Relig. Release probably is going to be the second beta. The thing about release is that it's not season 1. So season 1 comes later. So everything that we go through at the launch of the game, the characters that we make at the launch and everything and all the stuff that we build is going to have to be redone when the season starts, because the season is going to be new characters. So basically having access to the characters in advance of the season is a way that we're going to be able to test out and exploit the crap out of the game. And yes, by season 1, they're going to take a look at all the stuff that we exploited, and they're going to be like, nerf, nerf, buff, buff, nerf, nerf, buff, 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 nerf, 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 buff, 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 buff. And they're just going to run around doing that to everything that we played around with in the first couple weeks of the game. I don't know when season 1 is officially supposed to start. I don't think they actually came out with an official date yet, although they did give us like a kind of like a roundabout kind of meh kind of a thing. But my assumption is that we're going to see a lot of balance changes right before the season goes live. And I can't believe that the Hydras didn't get a nerf, to be honest. The Hydras were freaking broken. Like, they could have done something to the Hydras. Like, you guys don't even know how broken they are, probably. Like, because you didn't have somebody exploiting the crap out of them in your kinship. We had a guy who was literally running Hydras. He had full Hydras. He had all the Hydra enchantments. He had everything he could possibly have, right? We were doing the Ashava fight. All right. In the Ashava fight, literally this boy was like so far away from the fight that you couldn't even see him. He was literally like outside of the radius of all of Ashava's attacks, and he never once was in danger. And he literally just sat outside of the Ashava fight, casting Hydras inside of the range of Ashava, And that's all he did. He literally just put his mouse on the very edge of the screen, literally at the very edge of the screen, and just casted Hydras at the corner of his screen, and just killed Ashava like 2 screens away from Ashava. He was literally just casting Hydras, and he was literally murdering Ashava with absolutely no danger to himself whatsoever, while he literally laughed. While he literally laughed about being invincible over there in the corner. So I can't honestly believe that they didn't apply some sort of like thing to the Hydras to make them a little less OP. Maybe reduce their casting distance or reduce their firing distance or something like. For a fact that if Blizzard saw you doing that, Meow, they would have been nerf hammering the crap out of it. We need to submit the video. I'd be like, Blizzard, we're gonna need you to take a look at this video real quick. A crit for 150k doesn't mean anything. It's called burst damage. So here, let me bring up a calculator and show you the difference between burst damage and DPS, right? So even if the Barbarian can do a 150,000 damage crit, he can't do that every single time, and he can't do that over and over and over again. So if he can hit 150,000 maybe once every 10 seconds, that's 150,000 divided by 10, which brings it down to 15,000. If he can hit 150,000 crit every 10 seconds, which there's no guarantee he's going to hit 150,000 damage crit every 10 seconds. Meanwhile, the Hydra's over there doing 3,000 damage per second in that same 10 seconds has done 30,000 damage guaranteed. The Barbarian is hoping he'll get a crit. Unless he's got a way to guarantee the crit, which is a whole different story. The Druid had a guaranteed overpower, and the Druid's guaranteed overpower was freaking insane. I'm not sure if you guys played around with the Druid's guaranteed overpower, but the Druid's guaranteed overpower could be used on other abilities, and I remember it being really broken. Yes, and the Barbarian has to risk his butt. So that comes down exactly to this, which is literally everybody was saying that the Barbarian was weak as crap and literally couldn't do anything without his iron skin. For those of you who actually played Barbarian and actually messed around with it, the Barbarian could not do anything like without iron skin. Like it was a mandatory pick to be able to get in there and actually do anything. Otherwise, you would just end up dead. And this is literally a direct response to that. See, that's what I was saying too, Meow. Like, I felt like the skeletons died an awful lot already, and I don't really understand this change at all. Like, I really felt like they were already dying a whole lot, and they were already always dead in every boss encounter. I mean, they weren't dead in every encounter. Like, regular monsters didn't kill the skeletons on a regular basis, but the elites did. And most of the time when you were having, when you were in a battle, like, the minions were dying a lot. Like, if it was any kind of serious battle, they were dying a lot. So, if they're trying to make them die in the regular battles too, then that means that in the boss fights, they're going to be dead instantaneously. The boss is just going to go, like, sweep his arm, and all the skeletons are going to fall down. If you built them correctly, Oriella, yes, the barbarians got pretty tough. But the problem is, as you notice here, it says some skill tree passives had their damage reduction effects reduced to compensate. So they didn't make the barbarian tankier. What they did is they made the barbarian tankier without having to put the points into the passives. So if you had put the points into the passives, you could make the barbarian this tanky already. They took those passives away, basically, and then they gave it to the barbarian as a standard. So the barbarian is just 10% tankier now in general. So you don't have to put the points in, but now he can no longer get that same amount from the points that he could once get. Min-max level 35 gear. The level 35 gear was pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. Back it up, Boobus. Boobus the monster dog. The healing was terrible. Like, I don't know if you guys use the Necromancer's priests, but the Necromancer's priests were, like, they didn't really give enough healing. Like, I felt like for the number of corpses that it took for me to heal up my skeletons, I might as well have just let them die and resurrect them. Like, one skeleton priest would heal my skeletons by, like, 10% of their HP. It was awful. And, meanwhile, if I let the skeleton die and then resurrect him, he was at full health again. So, and then this also brings back the whole making them weaker thing. So, like, if you're making the skeletons weaker, then why do I want to heal them at that point? So, if you're making it to the point where the skeletons are just going to die over and over again, and me healing them is pointless, well, then why even have the skeleton priest at all? I want double swing to be good for some reason. Didn't they make a change to double swing? They did make a change to double swing. Double swing skill enhancement refunds its full fury cost when used on stunned or knocked down enemies. So basically, it just doesn't cost any fury anymore if you've got stunned or knocked down enemies, which, I mean, there are definitely some items in the game which you can make that will apply stuns and knockdowns. So, I mean, you could potentially make double swing very interesting in that way. I don't know. I need to get into the game and play with them, I guess, but I don't. I just don't. I just don't see that as being like a good thing. I feel like you already had to require utilizing the corpses to keep them alive. I don't think Whirlwind got nerfed. It got changed. I mean, they increased the damage and increased the fury cost, so the damage output should stay the same, so to speak. You just won't be able to maintain it all the time because they increased the fury cost. So, in general, when it comes to this ability, what you're looking at is just less spammy and more using it as an ability, I guess. Which is really not how people like to use Whirlwind, by the way. People like to use Whirlwind as just kind of like their main damage ability. So increasing the Fury is unfortunately going to make it less spammable. Yeah, there was a couple abilities like that, Rosend, that I thought needed to be like constant abilities, and I don't know why they weren't constant abilities. Whirlwind is definitely one that you probably want to be a constant ability. The Druid Hurricane, the Hurricane ability was not constant either, and that was really weird. It's a constant ability in Diablo 2. You basically just have to recast it every single time it goes down, but it has a duration, and you can increase the duration, and casting it just simply costs resource. Um, you know, and you could just simply cast it over and over and over again and keep it up all the time, which is exactly what you want to do with Hurricane. You want to keep it up all the time, but the Druid's Hurricane was on a cooldown. I think it was, what was it, like a 20-second cooldown with like an 8-second duration, so it was only up half the time. What's up, DOA? Upgrades for subterfuge skills have had their bonus increased. Multiple passive skills have had their bonus increased. So passives and the subterfuge skills got buffs. I'm kind of surprised there's not more on the rogue here. It does feel more awesome in Diablo 2, Pata. I'm kind of surprised not to see something in here about the horrible immune and stuff effects that would appear on the screen. Like, you know what I'm talking about. Like, every single 5 seconds, like, popping up on the screen. Immune, 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 immune. And they were huge. I mean, it would take up, like, half the damn screen. Like, one immune thing. And they were popping up all over the place. Like, I'm kind of surprised that we don't see anything about that in here. Like, I understand that they need to let us know that the monster's immune to something. But, like, number one, what are they immune to? Number two, like, does it have to pop up on the screen 7,000 times? I mean, it looks like we're gonna get some clarification on this stuff in the live stream that's on the 20th. So we're gonna have to take a look at that. But it does say right here, it says this time our Diablo 4 experts will uncover details about Diablo 4's endgame offerings and elaborate on post-open beta changes made to classes and dungeons. So we'll get probably some screenies, maybe them talking about it specifically, some people probably asking questions and whatnot, but at least we're going to actually have some information, you know, like on the changes as opposed to just notes. So hopefully we'll actually be able to dive into it a little bit and see what the hell they've changed. Maybe they'll go over some of these legendary items, like what kind of stuff they changed. Like, that'll be interesting if they decide to show off any of the legendary stuff that they've changed. Because obviously this affects, you know, builds and things that people might have planned. But at the same time, it's also something that I want to see what direction they go in. Like, how do they nerf stuff? Like, what do they do? How did they buff it? Did they just increase the duration or increase the cooldown or decrease the cooldown or something? Or did they actually change the ability so it works differently than it did before? Like, what specifically are they doing to make the changes, you know, as they say, updates to their effectiveness? Like, what is their consideration for updates to their effectiveness? I wanna know what the hell they're thinking in their head when they're trying to change this kind of stuff. Joy said, "Heck yeah," about the immune messages. I've been screaming about those from the start. I may even quit Diablo 4 if that nonsense isn't sorted out. Honestly, it just litters the screen with immune messages. It's stupid. I feel the barb will 100% have ways to whirlwind forever, but it will be through gear and Paragon. I mean, yeah, if you can gear and Paragon it, people will be okay with it, but I don't know. I kind of would like to see it the other way, which is where it's automatically an infinite skill, and then gear and Paragon points will make it into something else. Like maybe a stronger ability, or I don't know. Like, because I kind of feel like its native form should be the 100% uptime. I had a way to increase the damage with items, but I had it built to barely mitigate the high fury cost. With the new D4 planner, I have the shouts on 10-second uptime with cooldowns of 4 seconds. You're spamming shouts, huh? Yeah, spin to win has always been a thing. That's where the 12 gigs of VRAM goes, showing immune 6,000 times on the screen. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's where all the VRAM goes. I wonder if there's anything on the forums. Let's take a look real quick. That was March 26th. Necro minions nerfed? What the hell? Skeletons' health are already weak, and their damage is utter garbage, especially in endgame. They did not need this nerf. I already needed to summon the Skeleton Priest all the time to make them live a bit longer, and now I have to re-raise them even more. We were allegedly using corpses more actively. We were already using more corpses more actively. They couldn't even had a chance against the prologue boss. At least buff their damage further or something, especially in higher world tiers. I would also suggest to build an increased number of minions by X into their passive skills. For the majority of content, the only things I had to resummon were the skeletal mages, and that was mostly because I chose the ones that use their own bodies as weapons. In some boss fights, particularly against Khazra, who have that hard-hitting melee AoE, they would go down quickly, but other than that, the skeletons were nearly invincible. So I did not experience this, and I built a summon necromancer, so I actually built specifically a summon necromancer that had like maxed out passives for the summons, and I did not experience that ever. They were never nearly invincible. Most bosses would kill them pretty quickly, and I had to resummon them several times. Ashava just absolutely annihilated them from existence. For the boss fights where it was an issue, I would just take any sort of skill that shreds corpses to make sure I always had fresh corpses for summons, and that solved the issue. The summon build is already pretty active when it needs to be. No need to be more active, and in higher difficulties they will die like flies and hit like wet noodles anyway. I bet you it was to prevent AFK farming, which was a thing in beta. People were AFK farming with the skeletons. Now that makes sense. Hmm. I'm interested in this. I wonder if anybody replied to this. I'm actually trying to see if anybody replied to it. This guy's right. He says, honestly, I have no idea why nerf the skeletons and force the players to press the summon button more, while we are already being forced to press the button every 5 seconds to maintain the skeleton priest buff. Really, what is the point of this nerf? I kind of feel the same way. Like, you're constantly summoning the skeleton priest all the time anyway. Like, it's a constant thing to summon the skeleton priest to heal the minions. So, like, why in the world would they want us to have to press the button even more than we're already pressing it? Because we're literally spamming the damn thing to try and keep the skeletons alive in the first place. I mean, if this guy is right up here, that it is to prevent AFK farming, if this guy is right, then don't make the skeletons weaker with no, like, retrospective, I guess, instead make the skeleton priests higher healing so that we don't have to spam the skeleton priest all the time. That way it's a game of keeping the skeletons alive. And if the skeleton priest actually works properly, then yes. So the skeletons would die easier, but we could also heal them easier with the skeleton priest, which means if we're there and we're actively pressing the button, then we can keep them alive. That still doesn't help for when bosses literally just one-shot your entire army. I could AFK kill everything in the same beta like you with the Thorns Barbarian. All I have to do is just stand there and everything dies. And I would heal back up and wait till they get rezzed and kill themselves on me again. That does not mean that they should nerf Thorns Barbarian. No, it doesn't, because we're not playing the game at a high difficulty. So judging a class at level 25 is very premature and inaccurate. I mean, he's not wrong, but I don't really understand how AFK farming would even work, though. You still have to be there to pick up the items that fall on the ground, don't you? Wouldn't the easier way to deal with that just to be to make the items disappear after a certain period of time, so that if somebody is AFK farming, the items would just simply disappear off the ground so that you don't have to worry about the person AFK farming? Because if they stand there for more than, say, 20 minutes and the item has been sitting on the ground for 20 minutes, then it just goes poof. Diablo 2, by the way, which I have already tested this many times, has a very similar mechanic, which is where the all the stuff will just disappear off the ground after a certain period of time. After 10 minutes, anything that's considered trash disappears. After 20 minutes, anything that's considered, moderately good disappears. And then after 30 minutes, all of the high-value items disappear. So you've got 30 minutes to pick up items. And if they did the same thing in Diablo 4, that would completely eliminate any kind of AFK farming, because you'd have to actually be there to pick up the items. And if you waited for too long, everything that drops on the ground would just disappear. Yes, most MMOs took care of it with that way as well, Meow. They would set it up so that after a certain period of time, your character would just get logged out if you were just sitting there AFK for a certain period of time. It's auto AFK kick or whatever. In response to today's beta retrospective update. I do not appreciate Whirlwind consuming even more fury. The skill already ate up ridiculous amounts of fury for little to no gain, unless you massively buff the ability's damage. Necromancer, these changes are so disappointing to me. Necromancer was the only class in the entire beta that felt well designed and fun to play. Every other class needed to be buffed up to the Necromancer's level, not have the Necromancer being nerfed into oblivion. Making skeletons more squishy is anathema to the entire design of the class. I was already consistently losing skeletons bosses before. Now I expect I will not have them at all for boss fights. This is plain unacceptable. I'm doing the announcer voice. You are deluding yourself if you think Corpse Explosion's damage was fine. It was too damn high. I threw in the damn. Necro minions nerfed. 13 new replies already. Dang. People are pretty salty about the Necro minions getting nerfed. Hmm. TBZ announcer voice. That's right. DBZ announcer voice. What is this known issues? Brr, 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 brr. The hell is this? Necromancer summons luminance levels are not fully finalized. They will be adjusted for launch. Necromancer summons luminance levels. The luminance levels are not fully finished, guys. The luminance levels are not fully finished. We are not fully finished with the luminance. The luminance. And then down here we have, of course, the brightness of the skeletal warriors and mages have been reduced. I don't even want lights on them at all. Like, why are they glowing? Like, why are they glowing? And let's talk about this for just a second, because I feel like this deserves to be talked about. Can we talk about this for a second? Why are all the ghosts in any ghostly-like or spirit-like creature in Diablo 4, why are they all, like, glowing like damn Disney characters? Like, am I the only one that noticed this? Like, that literally every single ghost and every single creature that is a spirit or spirit-type monster in Diablo 4 is glowing like they are a freaking ancestral spirit from the movie Mulan? Like, I mean, I'm gonna pull up a freaking image here. All right, this is the hilarity. I'm pulling this image up. They legit look like this. That's what they look like. Like, I'm not even kidding. They look like they come out of the movie Mulan. This is literally a picture from the movie Mulan. I'm not even joking. This is literally the ancestral spirits of the movie Mulan. They look like they came straight out of the movie Mulan, like they're freaking Disney ghosts. Why do they all look like Disney ghosts? Who is designing the Disney ghosts? Like, let's make them look scary. Let's make them look creepy. Let's make them look like they're actually something to be afeared of. Like, why are they Disney ghosts? Like, let me give an example real quick of a spooky ghost, okay? Because here I am talking about a ghost that's not spooky, right? So this is like a comedic, like kids ghost, right? So let me show you a ghost that's not spooky. That is actually spooky looking. Get out of there! God dang! He's literally so close to the computer. He's literally pushing the computer. Like, I kid you not. He's literally pushing the computer away. Like, why can't they look more like this? Like skeleton bones and like, yeah, they're a little ethereal and everything, but like actually kind of spooky looking. Like, not just Mulan-esque kind of ghosts. Like, why do we gotta have this instead of, like, this? I don't know. And they applied the same thing to the skeletons, too. That's the whole thing. So the skeletons, the minions look exactly the same. They're so luminescent that they literally look like they belong inside my PC case. Like they're RGB skeletons. Let me get some of them RGB skeletons. I like some RGB skeletons. Do they come in purple? I want aqua pink. That's right. Now you gotta watch Lord of the Rings online again. That's right. That's right. Alright, well, I think we've pretty much covered everything. I don't think there's anything else left. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining me for these fun adventures into Diablo land. And as always, keep watching. Also, I'll probably be continuing my solo self-found run later today, so if you guys want to join me, I'm almost finished with normal difficulty on my solo self-found melee druid. It's been rough. It's been a rough run, but I'm almost done with normal difficulty, and I'm moving into nightmare difficulty. So, yeah, join me for that later today. And hit the like button.